Hello everyone, and welcome back to another session of Dark Souls 2 PvP and another weapon showcase. This time we are using the Notched Whip, which is a weapon we don't see very often. It's generally very overshadowed by pretty much all of the other whips in its class, especially the Old Whip. And you know, I can understand why. This thing, it doesn't have a great damage output, and it doesn't really, do much with the bleed, because bleed in this game generally is kind of not that useful. But it's still honestly a pretty good weapon and can be very good at building up bleed and kind of overwhelming a lot of people. It's actually fairly surprising, to say the least. So, getting started, the Notched Whip, it requires 12 strength and 20 dexterity in order to wield. It has no strength scaling and an A in dexterity. The physical base damage of the weapon is 205, and with this build, I have an attack rating of 374 with a Ring of Blades and Flynn's Ring. So that is a 274 without one, or without either. The bleeding base damage of the weapon is 200, and the bleed total for me is 275 with the Crest of Blood, which adds an additional 50. If I wore the Shadow Gauntlets, I'd have another 50 or so on top of that. So that's honestly pretty good. It lets you bleed people in 2 to 3 hits on a regular basis, and that's a very good thing, to be perfectly fair. That is a very good thing. Bleeding gives you an extra 200 damage on the hit that causes the bleed, and it cuts their stamina in half, which can lead them to messing up. It really helps overwhelm your opponent, and if you have an aggressive playstyle, then you're going to be in very good shape, and they will, well, not be. The counter strength of the weapon is 100, the poise damage of the weapon is 15 per hit, and the weight is 2 units. Now, as I was saying, bleed, it's not terribly useful in this game. In comparison to what it was in Dark Souls 1, it's not that great. But it still does have a purpose, and this weapon really does, it does its job well. It bleeds people out very frequently, and that's a good thing. Now, this weapon, it can't be infused or buffed. So you can't just go with a bleed infusion or put on a bleeding serum to it and bleed people in one hit. Because let's be honest, that would be a little bit OP. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. If this weapon bled people in a single hit, then you'd be doing an extra 200 damage on every hit, and then you'd be hitting as much as an Old Whip, and we can't have that, can we? We don't need 2 whips that can deal that absurd amount of damage. So, whoops. So, there's that. The biggest pro of the weapon, I would have to say, is the reach. Whips in general have a pretty long reach to them, and that's nothing special about this. It's a common theme among whips. It's not the longest whip, it's not the shortest whip, but either way, it still is a whip, and as such, has a very long reach to it. The moveset I would also consider to be a very big pro. It's very good at chasing people down and hitting people when they don't exactly expect it, especially the one-handed running attack, how it does the spin. A lot of people don't really expect that, and you'll be able to catch them off guard. You'll be able to, if you unlock, run sort of next to them, not directly at them, but to the side of them, and then do your little spin and hit them. And that gets more people than it honestly should. So, there's that. Now, the cons, I would have to say the biggest one is the fact that it cannot be infused or buffed, but honestly, that's a good thing, because we already went over that. Other than that, bleed could be more useful, it could do more damage, but it's a light weapon, its damage is decent enough to get the job done, and it bleeds people fairly regularly, so I'd say it is fine the way it is, to be perfectly honest. I really would. So, that is the last fight. This is the last fight, rather. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it helpful, and I will see you all next time.